Welcome to the Dean's List, engaging conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurship, artistic expression, and holistic health. Experience wellness in full color, where fashion, beauty, and art blend with body, mind, and soul. Embark on a journey that dresses your aspirations in style, paints your life with beauty, and sculpts your well-being in every dimension. This is the Dean's List, where inspiration is always in session. Welcome to the Dean's List, where we explore the intersection of entrepreneurial brilliance, sustainable practices, and culinary artistry. I'm your host, Alison Dean, and today we're diving into the pioneering world of food with Anya Fernald, a trailblazing entrepreneur, chef, and sustainable agriculture expert. From her roots as an artisanal cheesemaker in Europe to founding multiple groundbreaking enterprises, Anya's journey is a testament to the power of combining sustainability with culinary excellence. Join us as we explore how she's blending tradition with innovation in her latest endeavor, making the food industry way better. Hello, Anya.
Hi. You are really one for the dairy puns.
I was like, I feel like it's a perfect place to insert that, right? Like
I feel like your listeners should know that you sent me a text that said, "Sounds Gouda."
I feel like it's better than just sounds good, right? Because Gouda, right? I don't know. This was meant to happen, I guess, because of my love for cheese, right? This had to be. All right. So there's many things that we could cover. So we're going to start with the journey. You were working in Europe with artisanal food producers. And then now you're the co-founder of Shakewell. So obviously that's the timeline is interesting. I want to know, or let's talk about some of the key milestones or memorable experiences that really shaped that path.
I think it was really important for me to have spent so many years in rural Europe in my 20s. I moved there right after college, and I started out studying cheesemaking, and then I worked as a cheesemaker, and then was hired for essentially a labeling management organization for the PDO designation for Sicilian cheeses, and then worked in Northern Italy after that. But I think about what I saw, and a kind of a story that comes to mind is being in Sardinia. I was 21, 22 maybe, and I was visiting a Sardinian cheese producer in the mountains, and I drove up to his house, and it looked like there was a clothesline outside with things hanging on it. And as I got closer, I realized it was sheepskins that had just been butchered. So you can imagine everything still attached, and they're dripping blood, hanging outside, just something that I had never, as an American, you just never see that or think about that. And it was pretty jarring to the point where I'm sort of is this safe? Am I safe? And I went in, and then he actually made the cheese. This is Fior, which is a beautiful traditional cheese. And in that cheese making, he actually used rennet from the lamb's stomachs. So he had a bucket of lamb stomachs and crumbled rennet from their stomachs. So the natural enzyme, truly as natural as you can be. And this guy didn't buy anything for the cheese making. Of course, it's raw milk. Of course, it's just the natural bacteria. But then more importantly, he finished the cheese making, and I took pictures and talked to him. And then he just said, do you want to come inside and have lunch? And he made a little fire out of twigs. Can you imagine saying, "Hey, do you want lunch?" And then you start building a fire.
I love that.
Right? You're thinking this is going to take a while. Because for me, I'd only thought about things like barbecue, where it takes hours and hours. And do you want lunch? And I said, absolutely. I was literally famished. And these cheese making days started at usually 6 a.m. and then they didn't finish until 1 or 2. And so he lights some twigs on the corner of his cottage, basically. And then he takes a big sheep sausage out of the fridge that he'd made himself and puts it on a little trivet and just grills it and talks to me about his life. And tells me stories and tells me about how he made the sausage. And it was incredible. it was delicious. It was just like dry bread. In Sicily, they use this type of like, it's called carti musica. It's like this dry, flaky bread. And then there's this fresh sausage that he pulls off of the twigs. Oh my God, it was incredible, but it was so essential. And so, in that context, that's the food of poverty, right? Like that's the food you eat when you can't afford to go to the grocery store and get packaged food.
Right.
And it just turned everything I thought upside down. Keep in mind, I had been a vegetarian for 9 years before I moved to Europe. I'd been vegan for a part of that time. The idea of just like making sausages in your house, and then that's what you eat every day for lunch after you make their milk. I mean, it was just this incredible integration of animal livelihood and also being with people who had farmed the same land for 1,000 years. His ancestors had farmed that same plot of land for 1,000 years. So those kind of experiences of just seeing these super traditional systems that were at that time, and still are thriving, but are so simple and the opposite of fancy food.
Yeah.
The opposite of like a Michelin star restaurant, and loving it. And also personally thriving, my own health thriving, my own vitality, all the little things that had happened in my health in college, the split ends, the dry skin, like that kind of stuff just gone. Like all of a sudden I was so much more vibrant. I was so much more energetic. And I was eating a lot more meat and protein, but that was the kind of thing that I just, seeing that whole system and seeing a day in the life lived that way it was just like I'd walked through a portal into a whole different, universe.
So like that was the impetus, like what came next, so this was like a moment that is seared into your brain. And it was a portal to something new. So then,
well, it made me realize that I wanted to live in a different way. It was like, I was feeling much better physically. And I think what I suffered from is kind of broadly what people now call inflammation, a tendency towards various kind of inflammatory syndromes. Let's just leave it at that.
Yep.
And or signs that my immune system was maybe not working as well as it could have.
Right.
And I was loving the way that I felt. And I also loved the way that the days were structured. I love the attention and focus to making food. And I also love that it was the provenance of the people. It wasn't like for the elite in the way that I'd only seen that type or versions of that food. Like, I guess my experience of it had been that you had like fancy cheeses and meals like that were cheese and salami in only kind of a fancy context. And it sort of turned everything upside down. And things just tasted better and they were simple. So it was like getting used to, having an incredible meal and then walking into the kitchen and seeing that the grater that they were using was like a piece of sheet metal with nail holes in it. And coming from California where there's these endless acres of marble countertops and beautiful trophy kitchens. And my kitchen's like that now, beautiful and stainless and all this stuff. And that like having something and a gadget for everything. But honestly, most of the food doesn't taste very good. So going from that environment where it's sort of highly gadgeted and packaged and made to look a certain way to an environment where things were so essential, so simple, stripped down to the very bare necessities, and everything tasted so dang good. That was amazing for me.
I think there's so many times where it's the simple meals that leave a more lasting imprint on me than the ones that are, more fancy or, they have more bells and whistles to it, right? It's like, I think there is a lot of depth in simplicity, like flavors can really come through. Okay. So then did that then take you, like, what was the first big endeavor that happened? You went through all your
cheese. So I was in Europe in that time studying, and I just realized I want to stay here for longer and learn more. And I ended up working there for 7 years in various different kind of capacities between marketing and microfinance. I actually, by the end, I ran a microfinance program for a foundation investing in small scale food enterprises. I came back to the US and I worked in a social justice kind of organization running farm to school programs across California and Ventura, Watsonville, Fresno, and Davis. And I actually, in that time, kind of around that, I built and sold 2 different food businesses. So I had some early success kind of in entrepreneurship. And I also ran something that gave me a bit of a profile, which is called Slow Food Nation, which was a huge festival in 2008 that I produced for Alice Waters. And from that, I was hired at Iron Chef America to be a judge. I did that for 10 years. So a lot of things took off, and I started my consulting company. And I built a consulting company that worked both with USDA value-added producer grants, so supporting small farmers and getting those grants and implementing them. And then also I work with a number of private clients, including my eventual business partner for Belcampo, which I co-founded in 2012, which shuttered in 2021. And I ran the business until 2019. I was fired by the board then, but I built it to about 15 million a year in revenue with a fully vertically integrated supply chain. And that was, a big adventurous endeavor with lots of complexity. But I really, in that journey, I think I've been closer to my core light and further away from it in terms of alignment with my true values. I do think what I'm doing now is the closest I've had the privilege of being to my core values in years, which is a wonderful feeling.
Right.
But I think those core values are just about really high quality food that's extremely simple. And focusing on the quality of ingredients and trying to have as few ingredients as possible. And doing it in a way that's ethical, sustainable, and just really, I think it's about creating a product that's peak sustainable and peak health.
Yeah.
Those 2 pinnacle points.
A fun fact, for all of you out there, when I was pregnant with my daughter, it was Belcampo burgers that definitely it was like a craving. So I had a hairdresser in West Hollywood, and she's no longer there, Linda Cammons, shout out. But Belcampo was nearby, and so it was like a thing. It was like, I'm near because I was a Valley girl, so there was not a Belcampo near me, but. Yeah. When I ventured out, it was on the list, and it satiated that I need meat.
I'm really proud of the product that I built in that, especially in the early years when I really ran the company. It was pretty magical.
It was great. All right. So now obviously you did many things. You did a lot. Just now you shared quite a few things. I want to know what inspired the creation of Shakewell, and maybe share a little bit about what it is, since maybe folks out there don't know about Shakewell.
So Shakewell is a liquid whey-based protein drink with a very limited number of ingredients, between 6 and 8, depending on the flavor. And the special thing about Shakewell is that it has no preservatives and no added sugar and no stabilizers. So it's a protein drink that's really geared towards somebody who pays attention to the ingredients. And I don't know for you, but I've had the experience of when I drink a protein drink, any conventional one, I have that real ick stomach feeling afterwards. I think people sometimes think it's the protein itself. It's like, I don't agree with pea protein, or I don't like whey protein, or whatever it is. But often it's just all the other stuff, because there's a lot of stabilizers and things to make it all work. So what we've done, and we, as myself and my co-founder, Luke Cook, who's an old friend of mine, wonderful human, and we have basically created a drink using fresh natural whey as the base. And the natural whey is naturally rich in lactic acid, which is a postbiotic. And that lactic acid has a preservative effect on the product. So we get a 3 to 4 month shelf life on the product in refrigeration. And it's really innovative. It's like we're putting fresh whey back into this food chain, into the food supply, and instead of it going into the drain or going into, just protein powders, which is something that very large dairies are able to do with their leftover whey.
What lessons do you feel like you brought from, the things that you experienced with Belcampo into Shakewell?
Don't try to do everything yourself.
That's a good one.
That's really it. So we're working. I mean, the Belcampo version of it would have been to like build a dairy, buy 1,000 cows. Like we're working with Raw Farm Dairy, which is based right here in
Yeah.
California.
Amazing.
And we buy their whey in just 300-gallon vats. I'll be actually at their dairy later this week on Friday, visiting with them and discussing, the food safety and handling, et cetera. But it's just like to find it's taken us a minute. It's taken us honestly a year and a half to build the supply chain. And there's been various things for both Luke and I that have slowed the process down. But we've really just been careful about building a network of great suppliers and people that we're working with. So I think that, I think in sustainable food, it's tempting to want to do everything yourself because it is so difficult to find, valid supply partners.
Right.
But I think my lesson has been from the Belcampo experience that you can't really do everything well and manage all the pieces of a complex supply system. So you need to really find a group of partners to work with that have aligned values.
Quality partners. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was the story of birthing Shakewell?
It's a really fun one. I was with Luke at a barbecue, and I'd started making. I was cooking, and I like to barbecue, as you know if you follow me on social media. And so I'd cooked some elk and some cool foods, and I'd made a bunch of cheese because I make cheese frequently now, and I've since being able to buy raw milk really easily here in LA. I relocated down here in 2022, and it's like raw milk's everywhere and sprouts, and that's been fantastic. And so I started making fresh cheese. My son loves my fresh mozzarella. I make fromage blanc. I use it. I just like it's also just for me. It's like it's a beautiful way to tie back, things I've done for years and years and didn't have time and energy to do for a really long time. So it's a privilege to be able to do that. And it's not like I'm making cheese every other day, but every 2 weeks or so I make a batch and my family's stoked. So I had made a batch of this, and I had then, of course, with all the whey that I have around, I do things like I put it into my dill pickles that I make. I put it into my fermented hot sauce. I use it as the liquid in my levain, in my homemade sourdough bread. I use it as a liquid, like in my kids' blueberry muffins and pancakes. I cook with it in soups. It's a superfood. Yeah. And so I get excited about things and a little maniacal, and I'm very health oriented, and Luke's really into health and wellness. He's like one of those guys that's like the fittest guy you've ever seen. And he and I were talking, and I'm like, do you take whey? He's like, of course I take whey. And I said, have you ever tried it fresh? And I was like, why is nobody using this? And I was just like talking his ear off, and he's like, this is a really cool idea. And so we started talking, and about a week later, I went to his and Kara's, his wife's house, and brought a bunch of, little bottles with my fresh whey and just messing around with it. And he just loved the idea. And he has a great profile. He's just a good person, but also a great profile to help market the product. And it was just like an idea that we started bouncing around, but it was literally like at a barbecue where I was bouncing off the walls with like, this is so cool. This whey, it tastes delicious. I use it for this and that. And it's used this ancient food. And, a lot of people who use whey in their kind of health and wellness routine, they don't actually even know that it's a liquid, that it comes from cheese making, that's a byproduct, the whole story. And it's actually, it's back to Greek times, like Aristotle and Hippocrates. These people were using whey in wellness. I'm not saying you're going to get a lot of great tips from ancient Greek doctors, but the fact that it was considered this superfood for such a long time and it's not anymore is just amazing. And it's not just the protein in it, it's all the micronutrients. It's all the magic of milk is in the whey.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a powerful thing that you just said, because I do think many people don't really understand what they're buying when they buy like a powdered whey protein powder, like what that actually is. I think that's very true. Okay. You spoke a little bit about some of this, but Shakewell, obviously there's an emphasis on sustainability, clean ingredients that you said, you can count on two hands. How do you ensure, obviously the relationships that you've established with raw milk farms is a big one, but like of the other ingredients that are coming into play, I suppose, to make this product, how do you ensure that your standards are being met? And, in terms of like maintaining the quality with the sustainability? How does that all come together?
It's been challenging because our partner for the liquid whey raw milk is not organic certified. They're sort of a beyond organic brand. And the other issue has been that grass-fed whey doesn't have reliable certifications. So we were sourcing grass-fed whey and then learned that a lot of people just mark their whey as grass-fed, and there's really not much in the way of legal compliance around it. In some countries there are, like in Ireland and in New Zealand. But we were buying away and paying a premium for it. And it's like, it was also a very unreliable supply. So we were learning, like, okay, we could find the real grass fed, but it wasn't sure it was going to be around next year. And then, by the way, this pipeline is very, very unreliable. So we've decided to switch to just organic certified whey, because at least that is a certification. And just, environmentally speaking, I know this from having been in the beef industry for a long time, like grass fed in America is difficult because of our climate. And grass finishing beef, when you can butcher in certain times of year and process animals in certain times of year, is manageable. But grass finishing dairy with the caloric needs of lactating cows, that's challenging. So you have to really rely on, so there's a couple different, so we basically had to make a decision. We decided to go with organic certified, which is a more reliable certification with more guarantees behind it. So would I love grass-fed organic? Absolutely. It doesn't exist. The second it's on the market with real reliable certifications, I'm first in line to buy it. But as it is now, that product doesn't exist. So we're looking for organic certification. We're looking to but also we only have 6 ingredients. It's like fruit concentrates, which are organic certified. It's salt and some vanilla powder, things like that. And then it's basically the 2 types of whey: liquid whey, which we buy literally from people that are a couple hours away that we know personally and talk to regularly. And then we purchase the certified dry whey.
Real vanilla powder.
Oh yeah, we use real bourbon, organic, certified fermented vanilla from Madagascar.
I'm like, people should really go down that vanilla rabbit hole and learn about where vanilla flavoring may originate from.
I know. Yeah, that's like the thing with our product too. It's interesting. People are so used to stuff tasting really artificial in protein drinks. And Shakewell doesn't taste artificial. It tastes like a yummy smoothie. It's a shake. So what I love about it though is that people like for me, it's delicious. Like people who eat eat clean and can really have a palate for it, it tastes amazing. But it definitely doesn't taste like muscle milk or any of your conventional protein drinks.
I can't drink any of that stuff. I can't. It revolts me. I even have difficulty now with things that are flavored with monk fruit or stevia.
We tested that and we decided to not use stevia and not use monk fruit. We only use allulose, which is a rare sugar. It's organic certified. It's really expensive. It's complicated because of the cost. But it's something that occurs naturally in all sorts of fruits and vegetables, like figs and beets, and lots of things have allulose, and you can produce it naturally. It's organic certified. It tastes like sugar. It has a little bit of a flavor, but it's so easy on your digestion. And it's also a prebiotic, and it's actually been shown to be a GLP agonist. So it's really good for you from an appetite management perspective. And the issue with stevia, I don't think it's that stevia itself is like challenging. I think that the ways that stevia is hyper processed can present some challenges in some cases. So yeah, we played around a lot with that, with like, what do we do for sweetener? And just decided like, well, if we're going to go clean, let's just go as clean as we possibly can.
I like it.
But you're talking about like 20% incremental product cost. It's very expensive to use these higher quality ingredients.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me, especially in today's day and age. All right. I'm curious, like, since knowledge and knowledge sharing is certainly accelerated in our day-to-day lives now. So what misconceptions do people have about sustainable food practices? Like, I feel like you must, especially over the course of your career so far, have heard so many different things. So what are those misconceptions? How do you address them?
I think one is that it's expensive because people are getting rich. If anything, a lot of sustainable food producers are going into debt. It's expensive because it's inherently a lot more expensive to make.
Mm-hmm.
And the real question there is never like, why is this so expensive? It should be, why is the other stuff so cheap?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like it's like look at like buying a handmade table versus grabbing, a table at IKEA. It's like, it's just more expensive because of everything that goes into it. So the idea that somehow people are just really, really profiting massively, it's really false.
You're like, no.
Misconception. I know so many farmers that have gone into debt, that have, pulled mortgages, and so many small food producers that have done that. And then their products on the shelf at Erewhon at double or triple what you'd see a conventional alternative.
Mm-hmm.
That's heartbreaking, but that's just the economic reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I feel like big business doesn't make it easy on some of these smaller farmers that are trying to do the right thing. There's a lot of like legal power. I've seen enough of the documentaries that make you cry because, salt of the earth sort of people that are just trying to do a good thing and create really high quality products. It's a rough go for them. So there's a lot to say. If you can support, the farmers that are doing the right thing, you might be paying a premium, but it's because the quality is a premium. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think
better premium.
I think it really does cost a lot more. I have not seen any sustainable regenerative farmer that's really making bank off of this.
Okay, right. Nope. Okay, so obviously there are notable differences between the food standards and regulations in the United States and Europe, especially concerning sustainability, animal welfare, ingredient transparency. Like, based on your experiences working in both places, how do you perceive these differences impacting the food industry, like holistically? And I think, what lessons do you think the US could learn from the European approach to food standards and sustainability?
Okay, so there's two major areas I think are the most impactful. The first is that in many European countries, there's a flat tax credit for farmers. Okay, so in America, there are 8 crops that are subsidized. The big ones you know about, like corn, rice, and wheat, and soy, right? Yeah. And those 8 crops have massive subsidies, but there's no subsidies for any other producers. And then there's things that derive from that. So the fact that corn is subsidized heavily makes it very efficient to feed corn to beef, right? So there's sort of like ripple on effects. But really, if you're not one of those 8 types of crop farmers, you're not getting subsidies. In Europe, if you are any type of farmer, you're getting basically a 40% tax credit because you're getting the majority of your income taxes are relieved. So that's a really big difference. And it kind of explains why, like, you can have these American, like, cheesemakers that make this beautiful product, and it's so much more expensive than these cheeses that come in from Italy or France. And it's like, how can this be so cheap? And you go to, it's not that, so the cost of living is that different there, but that's why. So I think that's a big lesson. It's just like a flat across the board tax credit for farmers would be massive. So less money maybe overall for the subsidized crops or that listed 8 crops, but then more types of farmers would benefit. I think the second thing is that I think the European regulatory landscape looks more comprehensively at things that touch food. The FDA doesn't look at what packages things are in, what is used to many times what's used to treat things. It's like if it's not officially in the final product in the ingredient list, it's not considered. So things like bromating flour, some of the treatments that are used now to whiten, bleach, titanium dioxide, like there's a lot of additives that are maybe not on the ingredient list that are then used as a process for whitening or transforming, and or liners, packagers, tools that are used that have meaningful contact with the product. Yeah. And those things actually do end up in the product. So there's a more holistic look at the food processing environment in Europe. And that's beneficial to the consumer, I believe, because in America, we are allowed to to package things without consideration for the potential for contamination, for example.
Mm-hmm. This is a slight tangent, but because you said corn, it prompted my brain. Of the sort of the beef producers that that do like a corn-fed diet, what are your thoughts on corn-fed? Because I mean, there are times when I'll go to a very, very nice steakhouse, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, this is our premier steak, corn-fed. And I'm like, is it the premier? Anyway, so I'm curious, just like, yeah.
I don't think any corn is healthy for animals, for beef at all. And it's just marketing.
Thank you. I'm like, thank you for at least appeasing my soul when I'm like, no, I'll take the, I feel like
it's the same thing as saying Angus beef. Oh, it's 100%. It was like something like 85% of the American beef herd is Angus.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a claim that's made because there's a lack of information in the consumers. Consumers are not informed, so it's easy to make claims.
No, boy, is that true. Yeah.
Yeah. So corn, any amount of corn, it's been shown that the omega-3 to 6 ratio in beef starts to change after, I think, even just like 6 days on corn, really meaningfully, all their fat changes in character. And then after 30 days, it's complete. So it's very, very bad for the animal and for you in eating it. I would just stay away from it entirely. It's also like, we would like there to be a free lunch. I mean, corn-fed beef is really fatty and it's cheaper because of the subsidies, and fat's yummy. So of course you want to be like, yeah, let's eat this. But then, it's grass-fed meat. It's a lot more expensive. It's just not within reach of everybody. So, there's certain compromises that people have to, or, it's just, unfortunately, it's much more expensive to feed on grass, which is kind of ridiculous because grass is cheaper to grow by a mile than corn, but corn is subsidized. So unfortunately, that's just the way the system is right now.
Dang. I mean, it's like, okay. All right. You have to fact check me a little bit on this, but I think in previous interviews, you have emphasized that, scaling can make sustainable farming more economical. However, like some critics obviously would argue that, large scale operations might undermine the principles of sustainability in local food systems. So how do you address that?
There are models of very well scaled. I mean, I think look at Parmigiano production in Italy. That's I wouldn't say it's the most sustainable thing on earth, but it's like, there's good animal husbandry practices. It's raw milk. People are paid fair wages. It's also been around for like hundreds of years, which is implicitly sustainable. So it's like, there are systems out there that have scaled, and they do exist. They require a lot of cooperation, and they're typically networks of smaller farmers. So is that in line with the American mentality, and are American farmers in it because they want to collaborate with a bunch of other farmers? Not really. But basically, I think if there's ways to get groups of farmers that can collaboratively ask for a premium on pricing, there is a path towards larger scale sustainability. That said, I am not, apart from buying Parmigiano and a few other European brands, I'm not actively purchasing myself from any scaled American sustainable brands. Like I'm buying things like meat directly from farmers, eggs directly from farmers at the farmers market, most of my vegetables directly from farmers at the farmers market. So I haven't seen the examples out there in the US yet. There are a couple that I can think of, but there are more failures among them than there are successes.
Here's another thing that just popped in. Sometimes just random things pop into my brain, but I've heard some stuff about the rennet in cheese, and you want it to be like an animal-based one is what I think that's the standard. Yet there's so many cheese makers now that are using like a vegetarian rennet, which I think
is genetically modified.
Okay. And like, I feel like they're also hiding whether, because I mean, there are times now when I've gone into Whole Foods and I'm looking at it, and very few are calling it out now on the label. If it's animal, some of them will say vegetarian, and then I'll put it back because I'm like, okay, no thanks.
It's interesting. I just posted a cheese making recipe where I use animal rennet.
I saw it. Yeah.
And some people were asking me about that issue, and I was thinking like, oh, it hasn't like, I mean, I personally don't buy any vegetarian rennet knowingly.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not like, rennet's such a small amount in the volume of milk. It's, and you make a couple gallons, it's a couple drops, it's not, and volume is meaningful, like it's meaningful. Like the fact that there's so little of it, that I don't know if that's the number one. I'd be much more concerned about my milk quality than I would be about the provenance of the rennet itself.
Okay.
And whether or not, but a number of people flagged a lot of pretty terrifying things about Pfizer and vegetarian rennet. But vegetarian rennet is genetically modified. It was one of the first genetically modified products out there. And animal rennet is also, it's a whole animal utilization. It's a natural byproduct of the animal industry,
Yes.
and it's traditional and it tastes better. So I don't know why you'd use vegetarian rennet. I'm assuming it's because of, people feeling squeamish about animal usage.
Interesting.
Like because if you're a vegetarian, if you're like what they call lacto-ovo vegetarian, you eat the milk, but you don't want animals. And the vegetarian rennet is actually made from the stomachs of cows,
Right.
So I can see why that might be a kind of some brands maybe early on before people were as hip to label reading as they are now, felt like it was a better option, but it's absolutely a genetically modified product. There are vegetal sources of rennet that you can coagulate milk. One is in fig sap. So you can make natural vegetarian rennet from fig sap, but you'd need like acres of fig trees. I mean, it's not very convenient. So they're really talking about GMO rennet.
Yeah. I'm like, that sounds amazing. Acres and acres of fig trees.
I tried making it the other day and I like decimated my little fig tree. So I haven't you need a lot of fig sap. It's called fig lactate, among other things, which is fun.
I'm like, okay, maybe, I would eat the figs and not create the rennet.
I know, it depends on kind of how spooked you are with GMOs. And I think that you do need to pick your battles. I don't know. And there isn't, from my understanding, enough data that suggests that vegetarian rennet is of itself connected to anything we should be concerned about. But I think with all these like people with inflammatory diseases and stuff, it's like, it's a whole landscape of things that all share certain characteristics. They're genetically modified. They use hyper-processed ingredients. They have a lot of dubious oils, So I think if you're trying to clean out all that stuff because you have an ailment that's ill-defined and causing you pain, then absolutely scrape that one out as well. It's of that same ilk,
Amen. Okay. How do you see the future of the sustainable food industry evolving, especially I think here in the US? Are there
I think I see a lot of robust, thriving, mid-sized local enterprises. I don't see a lot of breakaway scaled enterprises. And I see very few cooperative efforts like what has paved the way in Europe that are thriving in the US. So I think it's kind of more of what we already have, and more people opting into those networks. It's great to see so many thriving businesses though, I work with a ranch in Montana called Tangent Draw. They do beautiful product. They sell direct. I'm friends with Stemple Creek in Northern California, beautiful products. I mean, people are looking to buy directly from local ranchers. I buy my chicken at the Santa Monica market from Autonomy Farms. I think people are, but there's not much. And I also do see some brands, like I was thrilled to see Mary's launching their pastured line. They have an heirloom pastured line that tastes great. That's available now in Whole Foods and Erewhon. So there are some brands coming forth, but I think that the kind of like super quality, I think a lot of the grass-fed beef, for example, in the grocery stores that I've tasted, doesn't taste better than corn-fed beef. It tastes usually worse. And that's unfortunate because grass-fed beef actually does taste better in my experience. And that's not just an opinion. I've done a lot of tastings. It can taste much better, but it also can taste worse, because the quality can be more variable. Right. So I think I see more medium scaled ventures continuing to thrive and building regional localized markets. I really do. I don't see like huge national brands putting on the mantle of sustainability and running with it.
No, right. I feel like the divide is going to get bigger, right? Because I feel like there's going to be still obviously the major players that, have overtaken so much. And I feel like there really will continue to be some of these smaller producers that keep popping up and just, kind of the grassroots of it all and people really sourcing it out. So I feel like it's like the great divide. I think there will be a lot more of that, from what I can at least. Okay, here's my fortune telling, I guess, for the day. Mm-hmm. What does wellness mean to you?
Wellness means being able to do everything you want to do physically with ease. To me,
I like that. So for you, given, I think how enmeshed wellness practices, clean eating, that whole thing is in your life, what are Anya's like daily wellness non-negotiables? So like the things that you need to do to start your day. If you don't do them, it's not as good of a day.
Watching the sunrise, drinking my coffee. That's probably it. But I'd say broadly, it's eating mostly home cooked food.
Okay.
That's been the greatest privilege in my life, the greatest change in the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. And it really started with COVID. But being able to eat home cooked food and the food that I source myself carefully has made my wellness so much better. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've aged backwards like 10 years since I've been able to do that. Yeah. I feel so much more vital and vigorous. And I think, when I was traveling a lot and really busy, I was always like eating the almonds at the airport and grabbing, grocery store salads and stuff. But in reality, those almonds are super blasted with whatever they do to make them last for years in the airport. And there's tons of weird stuff in those salad bar dressings. And that whole lifestyle has been, it's just totally in the rearview mirror for me. Mm-hmm. And it's so magic. It's so much magic to me to just be able to cook my own food, have a refrigerator full of jars of like cooked beans and yummy meat. And I really, really appreciate that. And I just think it's the most important tool for optimal health, to all the ice baths and NAD patches and handstands that you want. But you have to eat home cooked food to stay vigorous and vital. So that's been really the number one change and the joy for me. My family, I have 2 young kids and we will eat out once a month, tops. Mm-hmm. And like here and there grab stuff, but it's like at the farmer's market, get some dumplings kind of thing. And so I'm pretty extreme about it. And it's probably the most core family value for me. Love that. And then the other things are the obvious things like lifting weights pretty regularly, hiking a lot, laughing a lot, jumping on the trampoline, playing badminton every day with my son. Things that are like, give me joy, are also really important, and a lot of movement and a lot of fitness. I try to spend usually 2 hours outdoors every day. I either do a 4-mile hike or I am gardening and then I do a HIIT workout or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But I also really believe for women in their 40s, lifting heavy is super important. Because it actually just helps so much with back pain, avoiding injury. You've got kids jumping on you. Those kids get bigger and bigger, but they're still like puppies and they want you to pick them up, but you don't want your back to go out. So just getting strong and staying strong is really important to me as well. But the number one thing is just get cooking. Yeah. And in your cooking, think about your cooking budget and time as being 80% food sourcing. Right. It's 80% of it is getting to a farmer's market or to a great grocery store with really good products. You can be like the French and the Italians and have dinner, which is like a loaf of farmer's market bread, some really good cheese, some olives, and like an omelet. It doesn't have to be super fancy or take hours and hours, but you'd be just amazed at how much your health will improve with just not going out and eating random food.
Another amen. I don't know if Shakewell has merch yet, but you should do a hat that says "Get Cookin'," and then on the back it can be like a small little Shakewell,
and that's the thing for me with Shakewell that I love is that when I train and I want quick protein, when I can't eat, I love when I can't cook at home, I make myself protein. I put whey in powdered whey in water, or I grab like a protein cookie or I always do, because after a workout, it's the best way to get your body to turn all that into muscle. And so to be able to have that component just as clean and ready to grab and easy as possible is going to be incredible. I cannot wait to get our product out.
I know. What restaurant is the restaurant that you choose, your one time a month that you go out for food?
Okay. So my kids are little, so it's like pizza. Or the things that I don't cook, frequently is, Korean food.
Oh yeah.
And we love that. I cook a lot of Mexican food and a lot of Italian food, and a lot of meat, obviously. But so it's something like sushi, dumplings, Korean. And then also, it's the amazing thing about being in LA. There's just incredible Asian food. So that's usually the kind of stuff that we do. But it's also cool for me. I love that my kids really see eating out as a huge, they're like so excited. It's so unusual.
Yeah.
But then it's not like we eat huge gourmet meals all the time. We do a lot of meal prep, a lot of food prep. It's a lot of leftovers, a lot of tacos. But, your kids will just get used to it. If you don't give them the huge array of options, then you'll be surprised how quickly they pivot into being down with whatever.
Totally with you on that front. Okay. So how do you think your wellness, lifestyle influences your approach to business and product development?
I think, I really want to make sure I love whatever I make. I think in general, in creative and in product, you have to love it. You just start by really loving it. I really love Shakewell. I love the way it tastes. I love everything that's in it. I'm just so stoked. When I think about it, I'm like, I wait for people to try it. It's so yummy and it's so special and you feel so good and it's so filling. I get so excited about it. And that's a wonderful spark. Right. So I really think about what's the spark and do I really truly love it? Do I want to put my life force behind it?
Yeah.
And there has to be a firm yes, because doing anything else would be draining, right? Then you don't have that firm yes. And I've been there in situations where I don't feel a firm yes, and it's a different vibe. It's a different feeling. So for me, I have to feel that really strong alignment at this point in my life to get behind something and give it my all.
I think that makes sense. You've definitely touched enough things now where it's does it resonate? Does it not? Has your perspective on wellness, I feel like you already answered this, because obviously if you went from being vegan or vegetarian and, certainly appreciating meat, I feel like this falls into this question, but maybe are there any unexpected lessons or insights that you've gained through the years that have surprised you related to wellness? Maybe that's a better question.
I am surprised by how many people are sick.
Okay.
I'm surprised by how many women in their 30s and early 40s are perimenopausal or menopausal. I'm surprised by how many people have severe inflammatory diseases. I'm surprised by the connection between emotional stress and autoimmune disease. Yeah, every day I'm surprised. I'm surprised by how sick we are and how confused we are about how to fix it. Just today, I got a comment on my Instagram, or not a direct message of somebody saying I'm super confused. You talk like you're an American, but you're cooking like you live in a third world country. And it's obviously it was intended to be a jab, right? But it was also just there's such that lens on things where if you're, for me, a basic tenet of any recipe is all of my ingredients are an ingredient. They're not a product, right? So I make a cheesecake, I make the cream cheese, I'm going to make everything from scratch. I make Shakewell, I'm not going to use a vanilla composite flavoring. I'm not going to use a fat blend. I'm not going to use a bunch of different things in a composite form to make something taste like something else. That's not what I want to do with my life. So but the idea that somehow that is that I'm not, taking prepared mayonnaise and whisking it with prepared sriracha and not casting any shade on that. Those are things that I've done before, but those aren't recipes that I necessarily need to share. The world doesn't need more of that.
No, right.
But the fact that immediately is like, and the fact that he's using this language that's like third world country was so derogatory. It was really interesting. It's like, wow, this is like threatening to people. Like it's threatening to reclaim your power and say, you know what, cabbage is really delicious. You just have to take your time and cook it really slow, and then spend some time finding some really good, clean oil packed in glass and use that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like, so the way that things are, I'm not even sure where I'm going with this. I get emotional about it, but like it's incredible to me how radical doing things old fashioned way and simply has become.
That's very powerful. I mean, I think it's one of the things that I appreciate the most about the content you share, because you share so much of like just that simple stuff. And obviously you make it look so easy. Where I'm like, oh yeah, I just got to get my fire pit out and start doing what Anya's doing. Like,
I know it's a little bit silly sometimes. Like I know sometimes I'm like, I don't need, like I did a taton the other day in the open fire. It's like, okay, this is overdoing it. But I want to show people, I feel like by showing people how extremely simple it can be to do things outdoors, and that you can do all this stuff outdoors, that they might like evaluate more like, do I need to buy this gadget? Do I need to buy this prepared thing, or can I just make it from scratch? Because I see so much stuff which is so complicated, and so many like avocado spooners and banana peelers out there, so many gadgets, and all that stuff is just friction. It's not a pathway to eating more fruits and vegetables. It's just friction. And I really want people to feel empowered to just kind of get out there and make something simple and be surprised by how good it is.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I'm like, I'm a super fan. I'm always like, ooh. I mean, it's like, I think it's aspirational right now for me though, because like I see a lot of stuff. Basically, I've only ventured into eating the sardines that you've recommended, right? Cool. So like, that's like very, very, very easy. Like, oh, I can get that. I can do a taste test like Anya. Yeah. But it's the baby steps, all right? Like, so one day I'll be able to say, look, Anya, I did this. And you'll be like, totally. Well done.
I love it when I get messages like, I just bought rennet. I just did it, like, and it's, maybe I'll make cheese one time, but then forever you're an empowered consumer of cheese.
Yeah.
Forever. Like you're forever going to change. The second you do something from scratch, even if you don't do it that way ever again, you're better. Like early in my like 30s, I was buying whole pigs and butchering them at home and making charcuterie. Went through a moment, and I was like fermenting the salami and on literally hanging from a indoor clothes rack covered with plastic and with a heater. And it was just for me, it was just like for fun, but I don't make salami anymore. But I am forever a better consumer of salami.
Yeah.
Because doing something from scratch, you are making bread forever, you understand it better when you do it. And that's a beautiful, sometimes you can think about, I'm going to make this one time this way. So I'm forever a more empowered, more enlightened consumer of that.
I love that.
The same way you should taste your ingredients, taste your butter, taste your olive oil, take a spoonful of it. Don't mask things. Don't just throw stuff in it. Smell everything you're cooking with. Yeah. Really get your senses involved in everything. If you're buying a protein drink or smell it first. Because that's going to tell you a lot. Does it smell chemical? Does it smell clean? Does it smell like something natural? You really need to empower yourself to like be active and be engaged in the product.
Yes. Use your senses. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, you kind of already shared a little bit about this, but obviously wellness and social media obviously can be at odds. And you especially have a very engaged and growing audience. So I think, like, what are your plans in terms of like furthering the goals that you have in leveraging social media, to help with the messaging around, sustainable food practices and just the mentality on simplicity with food?
I've decided just to continue to share from my own journey of making food in the way that I see fit and be unafraid of criticism.
Good for you. Yeah.
Every time I post a recipe that's like from Central America, all these people are like, "You're not Mexican." I'm like, I'm obviously not Mexican. I don't pretend to be Mexican. I've just decided to go forward with courage. about it. It's interesting. In Turkey, they're thrilled if you post anything that's like different countries have different kind of sense, which I understand. Like there's a huge amount of pride and that's beautiful, but that's not, I also just want to come forward with my authentic self, and just be who I am. And I'm a nut about food. I make everything from scratch. I spend way too much time by many modern standards focusing on food, shopping for food, making it, pickling stuff. I do everything from scratch. But it's a source of delight for me. It gives me a huge life force. It fills my pot, it fills my cup, right? So I'm just intent on sharing that. And I want to make it approachable. And I feel really, I know a lot about food science, just for personal passion and the science of cooking. And I try to weave a lot of that information into my narratives in my videos. So I really try to share a lot of the science of things and explain the why of things, because I think it's really empowering once you understand that. You can do more and you can feel stronger in the kitchen. I want people to develop more intuitive sense. I think recipes are helpful, but they are limiting at a certain point. I think you should get to a point in your cooking where you read a recipe and you understand the essence and then you interpret it in your own lens, unless you're making like, a timbale or something super complex or croissants. Okay. Follow a recipe there. But like you need to get to a place where you can interpret things, where you can go to a restaurant and taste something delicious and make a version of it. So that's what I think we should get to, because then you're talking about actually having skills where you can creatively enact a vision as opposed to following a step-by-step roadmap.
I love that.
All the ancient cookbooks are just lists of ingredients. They don't even give proportions or descriptions.
Just like,
and that's like kind of an aspiration for me. I love that I'm at a point now with my culinary knowledge where I can look at something, get the gist of it, and just interpret it. And I do that with my baking too. I just I can understand the ratios. So I like to share what that feels like with people. And I like to share how much stuff you can make from scratch. And it's also been cool too. Like I get so many comments now of people saying, your recipes are amazing. And I'm like, that's great, because they're not really recipes. I know. And they're like, everything I make with your recipes tastes great. And the answer is like, well, that means you're using your palate. Because I say, use cumin, use bay, I give a list of ingredients, but I'm not giving it's not prescriptive. Right. It's very open-ended. And so I really love that I get the feedback, because it's like, wow, these people are growing their own skills, Right. And they're getting more confident and they're able to interpret things and just make it happen. And that's really what I want to get to, because that's freedom. You can actually create what you want to eat, and create moments for your family and your loved ones that really, really are exceptional. And you can do it at home. And it's like, so like safe and wholesome and wonderful for everybody around you.
Yep. Very powerful. All right. We're going to do a quick fire. And then there's a couple more questions. Okay. All right. So this is just really first thing that comes to mind. Way for people to know you a little bit differently. Are you an early bird or night owl?
Oh, early bird.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite color?
Green.
What was the very first paid job that you ever had?
I delivered the Palo Alto Times when I was 12 on my bicycle.
I think that you're the second person that delivered. I have to look back in my notes. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, cool.
Kids used to deliver newspapers, and it was like hecka dangerous. I got flashed. I got screamed at. It was like a big deal, but it was very normal. I was like this little 12-year-old girl on my bicycle delivering papers in College Terrace.
Can you imagine, like, in today's day and age, like?
Oh my gosh, my daughter's 12 now. I can't even imagine putting her out on a bicycle full of newspapers at 5 a.m. Thank
you. Right. It's like which is like
maybe that's like not good. I don't know, but yeah, delivering newspapers.
This is maybe a hard one because it's you. Favorite cuisine?
Oh, Italian.
Okay. You're like, no, that's easy. Favorite band or favorite musician?
Ooh, William Fitzsimmons.
Okay. Favorite country that you've traveled to?
I mean, it's unfortunately just Italy again. Boring. I lived there for a long time. I speak Italian. I just love going there.
I have a very fond place for Italy in my heart. What's the one app on your phone that you can't live without?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Messages.
Fine. Yeah.
Run my business on text, I feel like, or Luke and I are constantly back and forth, something like that.
Mm-hmm. What's the one word that you would use to describe your business journey?
Oh, courageous.
Love that. If you could have any entrepreneur as a mentor for a day, who would it be?
Ooh. Probably Jim Collins. Is he an entrepreneur? The guy who wrote Good to Great?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody that's like doing stuff, that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take that. What is maybe you already said this. What's a book that has significantly influenced your mindset?
Oh, I think Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Okay. Besides Shakewell, what is another like favorite business
Fish
that you have?
Wife.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Love their packaging.
I love their sardines.
Oh yes, I've purchased some because of you.
I
If you,
eat them almost every day. Econe as well is also delicious. Their price point is very high, but that's an amazing product as well. Ekone. They're
I think
smoked oysters.
you did a video on them too, right?
I'm
Yes.
going to do a smoked oyster tasting next, but yeah, Fishwife is just an exceptional company. I love their branding and I really rely on their products for my health. I eat a lot of their sardines.
Okay. You got to try them. If you could instantly acquire one new skill, what would it be? Instantly.
Oh gosh. I mean, I wish I was a good hunter.
Oh, wow. Okay. If you could time travel to any period in history, which era would you visit?
Oh, beginning of the Renaissance.
Cool. And if you weren't doing Shakewell and all the other things, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'd be on like an epic hike in the Himalayas with my kids, maybe.
Oh,
I feel like
okay.
I would be doing something. I mean, if I wasn't doing a business right now, I don't know. I'd probably be doing some version of what I'm doing now, but I have a lot of camping desires constantly. So if I was like really unleashed, I think I'd probably be like on the road somewhere.
I feel
I
like that
like
would
to
be
cook outside
That
too.
would be an interesting like Insta series from you. It's like food for Anya
I'm
camping,
just
the
gonna
camping
do
edition.
a little thing of cooking on the beach for when I'm with one of my partners, which I'm super
Yes.
excited about. So that's good. I'm
Yes.
working on that angle, and I'm thinking of like finding a really beautiful river where I can shoot some content and go out and do that as
Oh,
well. So,
okay. I'm here for that. All right. So let's look ahead. What do you think the next 5 years looks like for Shakewell and your other endeavors?
I'm really, we launch next month. We've done 2 trial launches for Shakewell where we had to reconfigure the brand, like reconfigure the formulations and change the taste profiles. There's a bunch of different like major obstacles that have all been surmounted with patience and
Mm-hmm.
step by step thinking. But
Mm-hmm.
so that once it launches, I mean, I'm really focused on building that subscription model and getting it out there. And then I have an ice cream product that's ready to go with the same formulation. And my co-manufacturer is a gelato producer. So I'd like to launch the ice creams and potentially do protein cookies as well. I love protein cookies. I
Yeah.
do mostly carnivore. Like I try to do carnivore, high protein, super high protein on the weekdays and then just eat whatever on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
But on the weekday, when I'm like, I really like good protein heavy snacks. Just, also as you get older, your whole insulin response changes and it's more difficult to find things that you can just like be delighted by that are yummy. So I'd love to do a line of delicious high protein snacks. And then with the social, I don't even know where it's going. I'm working on a book right now.
Cool.
So it's going to be called Into the Fire and it's all about my life and about cooking in the fire, obviously. So that's going to be fun. And I want to just keep on blowing it up on social and just doing more and more radical, fun things. I just got back from a week in Abruzzo learning about fermentation from Sandor Katz, who I've known for a long time, but had never done a formal course with him. And that's gotten me super inspired. Like I'm going to make miso and do like just like all those kind of journeys. It's fun for me to experiment with that.
So amazing. Okay, so Shakewell is launching in November then?
Yeah, it'll be either end of October or early November.
I want to just note, so the people that are listening to this, because your episode is going to drop, I think in December. So just note, Shakewell should already be here in December.
Yeah,
so just
and we will
fact.
be doing nationwide shipping in the start of 2025.
It's amazing. All right, now last question. What advice would you give to a new entrepreneur that's, starting out? Give them some guidance.
Love what you produce.
Mm.
Really love it. Make sure that whatever you're doing is a product you really believe in and really love.
Yeah. Because what happens if they don't and they launch something that they don't really love?
I think if you are not really in love with what you make, it's a strain to produce it.
Yeah.
And it's a strain to get behind it. And you're going to be, I think a lot of people do it. I mean, certainly there's lots of products out there that I don't feel like there's a founder or somebody who really loves it.
Right.
But I think it's a heck of a lot easier on your journey if you really believe in everything that you're doing.
Yes. Okay. Is there anything I didn't ask you or anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
No, this is great.
Okay.
Thank
well, then
you.
in that case, okay, good. All right. Share all the ways people can find you.
I personally am available at Anya Fernald on Instagram and TikTok. And then Shakewell is at Get Shakewell or getshakewell.com.
Boom. Okay. Well, Anya, Perpetual Dean's List. She's doing all the right things. I think everyone should follow her on Instagram. Try Shakewell when it launches. Anya, thank you so much for being on the Dean's List.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Okay, great. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Dean's List. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to stay updated and follow us on Instagram at official_Dean's List and YouTube at It's Official Dean's List. I'm your host, Alison Dean. Until next time.